There's a kind of tiredness that sleep doesn't fix. You get 8 hours and wake up the same. You take a weekend off and return to Monday feeling like you never left. You go on vacation and spend the whole time aware that you'll have to come back. This isn't burnout. Burnout has a cause you can point to. Too much work, too many demands. This is different. This is a tiredness that sits underneath everything. A weight that doesn't come from doing too much, but from the act of existing itself. You're not sad, exactly. You're not anxious in any acute way. You're just tired. Tired of maintaining. Tired of being conscious. Tired of the endless small negotiations required to get through an ordinary day. You're functional. You show up. From the outside, nothing looks wrong, but inside, something has gone quiet. The part of you that used to want things, that used to feel interested, that used to engage without effort. It's still there, maybe, but it's far away, hard to reach. This video is about that state, not what to do about it, just what it is. Because sometimes, the most useful thing isn't a solution, it's a name. Let's be precise about what we're describing. This is not depression in the clinical sense. Depression often comes with identifiable symptoms: persistent sadness, loss of function, inability to get out of bed. This is something else. You can get out of bed. You do get out of bed. You go to work, answer emails, maintain relationships, fulfill obligations. You perform life competently. But the performance feels exactly like that, a performance. Something you're doing from a slight distance, watching yourself go through motions that no longer feel connected to anything inside. What you're experiencing is closer to a tiredness of consciousness itself, the fatigue of being aware, the weight of having to think, decide, respond, exist, all day, every day, without pause. It's not that any single thing is too hard, it's that everything requires effort now. Things that used to be automatic now take willpower. Getting dressed, making food, replying to a text. Each task is manageable in isolation, but they don't exist in isolation. They exist in an endless sequence, and the sequence never stops. You wake up already thinking about everything you have to maintain: your body, your job, your relationships, your home, your image, your stability. And somewhere beneath that awareness is an exhaustion that has nothing to do with how much sleep you got. It's the exhaustion of being a self, of having to hold yourself together day after day with no finish line. People who haven't felt this will tell you to rest more, to take breaks, to practice self-care. And you'll nod, because it's not worth explaining that rest doesn't touch it, that you can lie still for hours and still feel like something is draining out of you. That the tiredness isn't in your muscles, it's somewhere deeper, somewhere that doesn't have a name in ordinary conversation. This kind of exhaustion doesn't arrive suddenly. It builds, over years, sometimes decades, and it often builds in people who were never allowed to notice it building. Look at who tends to experience this: the responsible ones, the capable ones, the people who learned early that they were the ones others relied on. The child who became the mediator, the teenager who held the family together emotionally, the young adult who was praised for being mature, for having it together, for not being a burden. These are people who learned to perform competence before they learned what they actually felt, who learned to manage situations before they learned to want things for themselves, who became so good at adapting that adaptation stopped being a conscious act and became the entire structure of their personality. For a long time, this works. It might even look like success. You're functional, you're stable, people trust you, you get through hard things without falling apart. But adaptation has a cost. Every time you adjust yourself to fit a situation, you move a little further from your original shape. Every time you suppress an instinct because it's inconvenient, you lose a small piece of signal. Every time you perform composure instead of feeling it, you add another layer between yourself and your actual experience. Do this long enough, and you stop noticing you're doing it. The performance becomes seamless. The persona becomes permanent. And somewhere underneath, the part of you that was supposed to guide you from the inside goes quiet. Not dead, just unreachable. This is why the exhaustion feels so sourceless. You're not tired from any particular thing. You're tired from years of not being yourself. And the weight of that absence has finally become heavier than you can carry. There's a useful way to think about this. Every person has a social self, a version they present to the world, a curated identity that knows how to behave in public, how to meet expectations, how to make things smooth. This isn't dishonesty. It's necessary. Without it, you couldn't function in society at all. But the social self was only ever supposed to be a tool, a flexible interface between who you are inside and what the world requires outside. It was supposed to be something you could put on and take off, something you could adjust. For some people, it becomes something else. It becomes the whole structure. The role they play stops being a role and starts being the only self they can access. The mask fuses to the face. And then there's no backstage anymore, no place to stop performing, no version of themselves that exists outside of function and adaptation. When this happens, something in the psyche starts to withdraw. Not dramatically, not in a way anyone would notice from outside, just a slow pulling back of energy, a dimming. The things that used to spark interest stop sparking. The things that used to feel meaningful start feeling mechanical. Life continues, but the inner participation fades. This withdrawal isn't a malfunction. It's a message. When the conscious self has drifted too far from the deeper self, when the performance has gone on too long without acknowledgement, something inside starts refusing to cooperate. It stops providing fuel. It stops showing up for a life that doesn't include it. Numbness is not the absence of feeling. It's the presence of a refusal, a quiet strike. The deeper parts of yourself saying, I will not keep powering a life that doesn't recognize me. The problem is that most people don't hear it that way. They just feel tired. They just feel flat. They assume something is wrong with them, that they're broken, that they need to try harder. And so they push. They add more effort. They perform even more, which only deepens the exhaustion. When you're in this state, ordinary life becomes disproportionately heavy. Someone asks you what you want for dinner, and the question feels like a burden. A friend invites you somewhere, and your first response is a wave of fatigue, not excitement. You look at your to-do list, and even the small things feel like they weigh more than they should. Reply to that email. Make that appointment. Buy that thing you need. None of it is hard in any objective sense, but all of it requires something you're running low on. Not time, not energy in the physical sense, something else. Some inner resource that you can't name, but can feel the absence of. Decision fatigue is part of it. When you're depleted at this level, every choice costs more than it should. What to wear, what to eat, how to respond, what to prioritize. The options multiply, and each one demands attention you don't have. Social interaction is part of it too. Not because you dislike people, but because every conversation now requires active maintenance. You have to listen, respond, track the appropriate emotional register, perform presence. Things that used to happen automatically now feel like tasks. And then there's the constant low-grade negotiation with yourself, getting yourself to do things, talking yourself through resistance, managing your own reluctance just to get through the day. You become both the worker and the manager, and neither one wants to be there. The strangest part is that nobody sees it. You look fine. You act fine. You've gotten so good at functioning that your exhaustion is invisible. People assume you're okay because you show up, because you don't complain, because you've never given them a reason to think otherwise. and so you carry it alone. Not because no one would care, but because you don't know how to explain it. Because "I'm tired" sounds too simple, and "I'm tired of existing" sounds too alarming. There's no middle language for this. This needs to be said clearly. There's a form of exhaustion that makes people say things like, "I don't want to be here anymore," or "I'm so tired of this." And when those words come out, they get heard as something dangerous, something that needs intervention, something that means the person is at risk. Sometimes that's true. Sometimes those words are exactly what they sound like, but sometimes they're not. Sometimes they're the only available language for a different kind of wish. Not the wish to die, the wish to stop. The wish for a pause that actually pauses, for a rest that actually rests, for an exit from the relentless continuity of being conscious and responsible and present and functional. The desire isn't to end existence, it's to stop having to maintain it, to not be the one holding everything together, including yourself, for just one moment. To put down the weight without having to explain why it's heavy. People who feel this often don't talk about it, because they know how it sounds. They know the words will be heard wrong. They know that saying, "I'm tired of being alive," will be taken as a crisis, when what they mean is something closer to, "I'm tired of being this version of alive," this effortful, performing, endless version. And so they stay quiet. They keep functioning. They carry the feeling without naming it, and the silence makes it heavier. What these people need is not alarm, not monitoring, not a crisis response. What they need is permission. Permission to be tired without it being an emergency. Permission to want rest without it being a red flag. Permission to exist at reduced capacity while the deeper parts of themselves slowly decide whether to come back. This isn't where I tell you what to do, because doing is part of the problem. The reflexive need to respond to every difficulty with action, to fix, to optimize, to solve. That impulse comes from the same place that got you here. The belief that you have to manage everything, including your own exhaustion. But this kind of tiredness doesn't ask to be fixed. It asks to be acknowledged. It asks you to stop pretending you're fine, to stop adding more performance on top of the performance, to stop treating your own depletion as a problem to overcome. What it's asking for is permission. Permission to be tired. Permission to not be okay. Permission to let the mask slip without rushing to put it back on. Permission to do less, to show up at reduced capacity, to let some things fall that you've been holding out of habit. Not forever, just long enough for something inside to catch its breath. Permission to stop earning your right to exist, to stop proving your value every day through productivity and usefulness and flawless adaptation, to just be, without justification. This is hard for people who've spent their whole lives being the capable ones. The idea of resting without having earned it, of stepping back without a crisis to justify it, of being less than fully functional and still deserving to take up space. But that's what recovery looks like when the exhaustion is this deep. Not a program, not a plan, not another thing to do well. Just a slow, quiet stepping back from the need to perform existence. A willingness to let meaning return on its own schedule instead of demanding it show up immediately. The tiredness you feel is not a flaw. It's not weakness. It's not a failure to cope. It's information. Your psyche telling you that something has been running on empty for too long. That the cost of maintaining the surface has drained what's underneath. That you can't keep going like this, and somewhere inside, you've already stopped. The way forward isn't more effort. It's less pretense, less proving, less holding it together for audiences that may not even be watching anymore. You don't have to fix this tonight. You don't have to feel better by tomorrow. You just have to stop telling yourself that the tiredness isn't real, that you should be handling it better, that there's something wrong with you for feeling this way. There isn't. You're tired, that's all. And tired people need rest. Not the kind you schedule, the kind you allow.